Welcome to Into the Blue, presented by Penelope Bourbon, a weekly look behind the scenes of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Hello, fans. You can rejoice because you no longer have to listen to me, Ben Pierce, rambling by myself. Julie Stewart-Binks is back from Italy and the Olympics. Julie, welcome home.
Ben, thank you. And I apologize. I haven't listened to this podcast while I've been gone.
Were you busy covering the Olympics? Were you busy?
But you've been rambling on this podcast by yourself. Kudos to you. That's a lot. That's doing a podcast by yourself. It's kind of like a long voice note to a friend. You just never know sometimes if you're hitting the right notes or if people are interested in listening to it or not. But I know from you, you're the insider. You got all the information. So I'm sure it was great.
I appreciate that. Like I said, I told the fans, I said, I'm sure you are all very excited to have Julie back next week, as all of us are. Man. It was weird. It was weird. Like seeing the first couple of practices, I'm like, where's Julie? And somebody was like, are you serious? I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I forget Italy's, it's not just a quick skip and a drive. So
listen, Ben, it was weird looking at Twitter and seeing like practices happening with the Bolts. And I was like, wait. It's
with like 11 guys.
I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, we're at the Olympics. Like there's a lot going, there's all the Bolts are over here.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting to see that life does go on when you're not inside the Olympic void.
Yeah. And it does, because Julie, as we talked a little bit about, like it is a full sprint from here on out, like pretty much a game every other day. I think there's 1 2-day break from now until the end of the season for these guys after the Olympic break. And it starts this week, right? Tuesday, they play at Minnesota. Thursday, they're at Winnipeg. Saturday and Sunday, back-to-back against Toronto and a Buffalo team that, unfortunately, we just saw hand the Lightning a pretty good rear kicking is probably the appropriate way to put it. But it was tough. And we heard from John Cooper post-game just how displeased he was with that game against the Sabres. But they got to figure it out because they're playing a Minnesota team that's buzzing and added Quinn Hughes this year, a couple of divisional opponents, and a Winnipeg team that obviously has Connor Hellebuck. So, and Kyle Connor, right? A couple of Olympians that you just never know. And we'll see. It's this week is full of tests.
Yes, I think you put it perfectly. I think especially Minnesota has been almost not in the same situation as Tampa, but like they've had dropped 2 games. So they'll be feeling really hungry to be able to get back on track. And as they were doing really well, obviously, as you mentioned, adding Quinn Hughes, and he's also got that Olympic gold blood with him there. And I think that that game is going to be interesting to see because Tampa and like having John Cooper back and having some time to kind of like a practice on Monday, going there, it feels like the ship might have been a little bit rudderless when we got back from the Olympics. Of course, obviously sending out our deepest condolences to John Cooper and his family for the passing of his father, but the team didn't have him there. And as we heard last game, Dan Highnote saying, when Coop's there, everything's going to be okay. So I think now maybe the team, it might have been a little bit frenetic with like the guys coming back from the Olympics, all of them having different levels of play at the Olympics too. And them coming back in, they are professionals. That's the thing I kept thinking about. I'm like, listen, they all had to figure out how to play with some of the guys had to play with guys they've never even been in the same league with, right? Like some of the international guys, they figured out a way to play with them. These guys all know how to play with each other. So it's kind of just like getting back into the rhythm of things. Maybe that takes a little bit more time. People are on different levels of like where they are in terms of where they're hitting their, I guess where they're peaking at the right time. But I think that it does take a little bit of time getting back into the swing of things. And I think that maybe now with Coop back on the bench and the Lightning have had a unique situation where they had a game immediately as like the first team back, didn't have their head coach there, and then had a back-to-back and against a very difficult team. And then they played so many games. So not great trends, as we have heard from Coop say the last 2 games were just kind of mirror images of themselves in the first 10 minutes. But I think Minnesota will be it's good to have them off the bat, I'd say. And then Winnipeg, Oh man, I mean, like as you said, you never know what you're gonna get from Connor Hellebuck. Like you could
Yeah.
get that
Just
gold
watch the
medal game
Olympics.
from him,
Yeah.
or you could get maybe a playoff game from him where he's not necessarily the whatever. Like, I mean, he's obviously, you know, one of, if not the best goaltender, if one of the best goaltenders in the league. So he can certainly steal you a game or at least make it difficult for you. And then Toronto, absolute dumpster fire. I can say that. I'm from Toronto. And so that one, they should be able to do something with him. By that point on Saturday, it'll be past the trade deadline. So we could see Toronto selling off a lot of stuff this week as they are
True.
far out of a playoff position. And then I think going back to Buffalo, I mean, it's the end of the road trip on the end of a back to back of that. Who knows? Like, I can't think anything can happen. And I think there'll be a little bit of a, hey, we want to prove to you, like, we are better than how we played you last time. And like, you should be worried about that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, you mentioned a little bit, Julie, the Lightning were able to claw back at least a little bit this week, but like it was what 3-0 at the end of the first period, their first game back, 5-0 a minute and a half into the second period against that Sabres team. Like you think about just even if they tread water for the first period, how different those games might look. I mean, they came back to tie that first game back from the break somehow, down 3-0, and you're like, okay, maybe they've got it figured out, but like the coaches have said multiple times, you can't put yourself in that situation. And I think like specifically maybe to start these games like that, in some ways it might be a good thing, right? To have a little bit of a reality check and say, hey, like we're not going to be able to just kind of float our way through this last month and a half because down a combined 8-0 through the first minute and a half of a second period through the first two games back from the break. Like, I just think the start has to be so much better than what we've seen if the Lightning want to keep their winning ways going. They've said that for both games. They mentioned, like, you just can't put yourself in that kind of hole. So hopefully this week we don't see anything like that because, again, like you said, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Toronto, Buffalo, they're all in different spots this year in the standings. But every single one of those teams has the guys that if you're not ready to go, they're going to put the puck in the back of the net. They all do, right? And, like, Buffalo – how about Buffalo this year? Like, what an improvement for them. I mean, like you saw that goal by Tage Thompson the other night. Obviously, a guy who was part of that Olympic gold U.S. team. You can't take any of these opponents for granted, regardless of the standings. And I know the Lightning, I mean, I'm interested to see practice today, Julie, because I'm sure it's going to be a very focused, very intense skate here before they hit the road. And speaking of hitting the road, we talked about it, Julie, the Winter Olympics. And we did recap a little bit the final in that solo podcast last time. Yes, exactly. I was wondering if that said Cortina. I saw maybe you are our resident Olympic expert here as somebody who was boots on the ground. What did you think of the Winter Olympics?
Well, Ben, first of all, it's been a weird year because everything's been leading up to the Olympics. And I felt like so many of my stories on the guys were like about the Olympics because there's so many of them going, and then coming back, it's like talking about the Olympics. And this year has just been this weird Olympic fever dream sort of intertwining. And it was, okay, so I was in Milan. That's where all the hockey, skating, like speed skating, figure skating were. And then all the very beautiful events on television were in Livigno and Cortina. And those looked amazing. That's so different from where I was.
Was curling in Milano?
No, it's in Cortina.
Okay. I was going to say, I was wondering if you got to see that, the big scandal with Team Canada up close.
Who would have known? Who would have thought?
Curling of all the sports.
And Canadian curlers. I loved Brad Jacobs, the skip. That's like the captain basically for the team of Canada. Was like, I hope everyone sees us wearing gold on top of the podium, and it's like burned into their brains. I'm like, damn, excuse me, that's like a real heel move to say. And who would have thought that was a curler that would be saying it? And so I love that little. That little whole thing that happened. They all are also really good friends. I found out through gleaning the information from my colleagues who cover curling quite a bit in Canada. I was like, okay, Mark Kennedy, that's the guy that had that, poking double touch thing. Like it happened. Also, then it's like, they weren't allowed to set up that camera by the hog line, all this kind of stuff. But it made for an interesting start to the Olympics. So it was interesting watching a lot of these teams. Like I was very fortuitous to be able to be there, to see it, to cover it. It was exhausting because we did the women's games, we did then the men's games, and we did everything. And I was with CBC, so we would do like a hot take with an analyst after the games, and then we would do like a whole wrap up, and then we'd be doing all other sports as well. So I got to go to every Team Canada game. So I saw John Cooper every game. And I felt like I was like, man, this guy's going to need a restraining order against me because I'm just like there, like always just there. Like, hey, I'm here again, like over in Milan. But there were times, at least for Canada, like that when they were against Czechia, it was like, well, maybe they aren't going to, like, maybe there won't be a USA Canada final. And I think there were times for the US as well where like, a lot of the games went to overtime that we maybe thought weren't going to go. And I had someone ask me like, was it ever not going to be Canada USA? And I said, no way. It was always, we waited 12 years. It was always going to be Canada USA. And for the most part, they did have the better players. But like, overall, I'd say what I would like people to know about working like the Olympics is like, it is so incredible to be there. You're so grateful to be there. You see, there are moments where there's so much Olympic signage everywhere. You see the rings, and sometimes it will hit you. And I asked a couple guys, like, did you ever have that moment where like you're like, oh my gosh, I'm at the Olympics? And every single one of them has said that. Like, you're like, wow, you just see the rings, and it's just that moment. You can never even really plan it. And so you realize like, wow, I'm an Olympian. That's something nobody can ever take away from them. So regardless of whatever medal they get, however they do, you got to go to the Olympics. And I hope every Olympian feels that way, that, wow, that's not normal. People can't go to the Olympics and compete. Working it, you get to see the field of emotions of like humanity. And I think it was like really, it felt great being there because you'd see people cheer for other countries. You'd see other countries lift each other up. And it just was like a really warm hug that you kind of needed at this moment. Like even when someone fell in figure skating, when I was watching it, everyone in the crowd was like clapping for them to like get back up. I'm like, oh my gosh, you just want to cry like all the time. Yeah. The Olympics like makes you want to cry all the time. And also because you don't sleep, you don't eat properly, you're already a little bit, on the edge too of insanity. So you're prime time to cry. And then like it's not glamorous working in Olympics. You are hustling. Like even Chris Cuthbert, who was calling the games for Canada on CBC, like I saw him in between games, he's just shoveling food and pasta in his mouth, just trying to like get energy, carbs, food. And you're grinding. You're just like, you talk about a sprint to the end of the season, which made me just like shudder because I feel like I've just been sprinting this marathon. I've just been like, okay, I guess I'm sprinting like the 3,000 meters right now or something where it's like, I don't know if you should be sprinting that one, but like, okay, let's see how you do. So, but that being said, it was nice. I captured it, and I'm thank you for putting that out there to Bolts fans. But seeing Jake Gensel go over to Sean Cooper at the end of the gold medal game, and he gave him a hug, and that was a nice that right there. It's like, I mean, that I think like encapsulates Tampa, right? Like that's a heightened moment. That doesn't have to happen in front of the cameras or on the ice in that moment. That could have been something that happened like you're coming off the ice or before that, whatever. And there's other coaches on that team too, right? That, all these different things could happen which way or another. And I thought, wow, I was like, that felt like a really good Tampa omen watching that there. So there are all these really interesting, neat things that I just started filming on my phone. Of course, because of geofencing, a lot of Americans couldn't see anything I did, which is like sucks. So I did a couple different pieces where I was like, if we don't use footage that's from CBC, then we're allowed to let other audiences see it.
Right.
Because or else you're like, well, if you look at last thing I'll say, if you look at like my Instagram and the pieces I did, and if you were to look at my Instagram, our pages would be fully different. What you could see and what I can see. And I'm like, the Olympics. I had so many emails from the IOC to my boss being like, take it down.
Just testing the limits, Julie.
I didn't know. I was like, I thought I could post about the opening ceremony once it's already happening live in action. Like, no, you can't, because American people can see you and other people around the world posting that. I'm like, gosh, we got to figure out these rules, because kids are not going to be watching the Olympics if we're going to make it so difficult.
I feel like that was the number one complaint, from hockey fans. Like, we didn't get to see any highlights even because they would get taken down. But
we used to call it, one last thing, yesterday in still photography. When I worked at Fox Sports 1, when we went to Sochi, it was like we didn't have any rights. So it'd be like yesterday in still photography was what the highlights were a day later.
Get pictures, no video.
Yeah.
Crazy. But it was a great Olympics. Obviously, Team USA and Jake Gensel bring home the gold. And there's a story on the Lightning website. He talked to media a little bit about that and what it means to him. And he said, like, we felt destined to win. And I know that Canada and USA, like you said, both did. They both thought this was kind of their year, and just a great gold medal game, both men's and women's, right? Like, incredible games on both sides. So just a great Olympic tournament. And thank you, Julie, for all the updates. We'll get to that a little bit later too in the question segment.
One caveat: Canada didn't have Sidney Crosby. Let's just remember that.
Okay. All right.
And
fair
Canada
enough.
also didn't have Braden Point and Anthony Cirelli. Okay.
True.
So to put a Tampa angle on it, we'll never know, because that's always the game we play, and USA rightfully won. And I will say, as covering the Canadian broadcast and anyone out there, like, yes, Canada had an incredible amount of opportunities to end it in regulation. So everyone understands that, and they didn't. And the better team is the one that puts the puck in the back of the net more times than the other one. That's what I gotta say.
It was a great gold medal game. You mentioned the sprint, Julie. That was the Olympics. I don't even know if sprint is the right word, because I don't know what these next 5 days is going to look like. But aside from this crazy week of games for the Lightning, it's somehow trade deadline week. Yeah. And I don't know how we're already here. Like you said, like, the Olympics was crazy. Everybody was kind of circling that as this is this season. And now the trade deadline is literally a week later. So it's interesting, I think, because the expectations for this trade deadline for the Lightning, I feel like, change literally every day. And what do you want? What do you need? Obviously, we talked a little bit before we hit the record button. Last week, we did see Braden Point, like who you just mentioned, come back, and he's looked fantastic, by the way, in his couple games back.
Look at that uppercut that he had. Holy.
Yeah, seriously. But Cirelli
could have killed a guy, and he didn't. He just was like,
he let up. Dastu and Lilleberg are all back. Those are all guys that we didn't see before, or since the last time we talked together on this podcast. But unfortunately, as the season has seemingly done all year long, we saw Gage Gonsalves and Dominic James both leave that game with apparent injuries on Saturday against Buffalo. So, Julie, with that said, what do you expect from the Lightning here at the trade deadline, given all of these question marks? What are we looking at here, you think?
Well, caveat, I'm not an NHL insider. Caveat, I'm not going to say all the things I think are going to happen, because it's just going to get me in trouble some way, or which way or another. And also, as you said, things change every day. As we just discussed, the Dom James, we don't know the status of his injury on that. All I'll say is it sounded like he's in a lot of pain. It doesn't sound like it was good. I was in the hallway, like where I sit normally, before I'd be doing interviews. I didn't do any in the last game because of how things went. And I just heard somebody like wailing, screaming at the top of their lungs. And at first I thought it was like staff being like
security dragging somebody out.
So no, like someone reacting to like what happened to Dom. And I was like, oh, that they took that one real hard. Because I felt like, I was like, oh man. But you hear someone like, and I was like, oh wait, that was Dom James. Like, he was in so much pain. And hearing that, I was like, I got shivers. I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be really, really bad. Obviously not speculating. We don't know yet. Gage Gonsalves, two guys, we talked about it in the top 6. Not good. You got your quote unquote identity line. You got your checking line. You're probably not going to mess with that. So I just spoke with a scout, a pro scout. And yeah, no big deal. I was just doing my due diligence. The general consensus is that the Lightning will do something. Like
They always do, right? They
they
always do something.
always do. But I was told don't expect a huge move because there is a lot of good chemistry in this locker room already. And when I say huge move, you can take from that what you will, and based on reports in the media. However, if you do lose two guys in the top six, depending on the severity of their injuries, that will certainly change who you potentially could be looking at. We also know Tampa is walking the line against the cap, and there are certain people that they'd have to move. They'd have to move people. They don't have draft picks until 2020. They don't have first round pick till 2028. So it would be like, I'm not I want to say things. I'm not gonna say it because it's whatever I say. I have the Binks jinx. Whatever I say, the opposite's gonna happen. Okay. So if
Binks
somebody
jinx.
wants something to happen, I'll say it because then it won't happen. Okay. So anyway, but I do think there's, you can look at the lineup. We also don't know necessarily the status of Nick Paul. That's like another one that's been a bit obtuse.
Right.
So regardless of his situation, and then the other two guys, I was told maybe like a kind of a quote unquote maybe fringe player, a depth guy, a bottom six type of person in the forward sense. But then also we know that there's not a lot of space to add somebody like that. And also maybe a guy who, if you're not like, just look at ice time of guys and you can kind of see who the team is maybe potentially who's in and who's out, like who's one of Coop's guys and who's not one of Coop's guys. That's what I'll say.
Well, and I think like you look at this team, like you said, I mean, right now they're tops in the division. They're one of the best teams in the NHL. And there is something to be said for not, altering the room all that much. But, and I mentioned this on the last solo pod too, because obviously everybody wants to know about the trade deadline. Like Julian said in his midseason availability, he said, if I can do something to make this team better, I will.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like, I don't, he said, I don't know what that looks like right now today. But as we discussed, like this is a team that goes for it when they believe in their guys. The conversations we've had this year, Julie, with Coop, with Julian, with even the guys in the room, like they believe in this group this year. They've shown what they can do. So something is coming. I think it's just a matter of, like you said, there's more questions today on Monday, March 2nd than we have answers for, probably just with the injury situation. So we'll see, I guess, what we learned today. But, maybe things change with the recent the injuries. Hopefully not, because that would mean they're not too serious.
Right.
But we'll see. So
and I think like to add to that point, if there are injuries, like that also changes the bargaining capacity for JBB, right? Like, because then teams would know, okay, you need somebody, right? Like there's all this, the negotiating back and forth type of thing is so fascinating with this. And you have to know if you are a general manager, you have to take a call, you have to make calls, you have to be doing all this kind of stuff if you're going to make your team better, and you have to take kind of your heart out of it because it's a business. So I imagine Julian on the phone and his guys on the phone looking at everything, looking at every single thing, and how can we make our team better? And then how does this person, you do recon on everyone. How does this person fit in with our group? What are the relationships like? What are, and Coop is so good at having that information or understanding. He's probably seen and they've already been watching all this kind of stuff. And scouts are so good. Having worked with scouts with the Boston Bruins, I got to be in their combine room in 2011, 2012, 2013, and getting to see how good they are at understanding like guys' body language, how they answer questions, how they read people. They scouted me. Like they knew, like, because I was in there asking questions because I was working the OHL, and they said, oh, well, you're around these guys a lot more than we are, and you can ask questions and do stuff. And so it's like, okay, wow, this is an incredible experience. But then they scouted me, and they'd be like, okay, we know which players you like that have walked into the room. And I was like, what? And they, like, Jim Benning listed off all these different players, and I was like, yeah, like those are the guys I thought were like the character guys that came into the room, or like I'm like, well, you guys watched my body language? They're like, yeah, of course, we're always watching every single thing. all the time.
Right.
It's like, wow, you guys,
Those hockey
Illuminati.
people, those hockey
Yeah.
fans. It's crazy. Yes, and with that, like I said, we'll see what happens this week because we're here. It's trade deadline week. We will move on, you guys, to the blue line segment. We had a lot of great questions, a lot of trade related questions, like we just touched on. So we did not use any of the trade questions because we just touched on the trade deadline. If you have any questions, you can call 813-301-6749, or otherwise we do put them out on social media. And Julie, you are up first because 702 Living, but always with the 813. What a username, by the way. Wants to know, what did Julie enjoy more at the Olympics between the games, food, or shopping? She was everywhere. So, Julie, was it the food, the games, or the shopping?
Um, I love this question. Thank you so much for whomever submitted this. I mean, the games, obviously, I love the most. Like you're at the Olympics, that's the best. I would say the shopping, number one. I would have liked to have done more shopping. That's all I gotta say. I was so busy. I didn't get to do as much shopping as I wanted to, but I did do I did have a pretty big purchase that maybe helped me eliminate going into more stores where I, as people would see, bought like this full Gucci outfit because I'll tell you, I walk by Gucci. I would buy Italian brands. That's what I say. When I go to Italy, go Italian. Go to France, buy French. Okay? That's my advice. All
Fair
right?
enough. Okay.
And so I walk by these like stores. Actually, I ran into Steve Griggs on the street in Milan, if you can believe this.
Wow. Okay. That's
he
crazy.
he saw me first and he was like, "Hey, Julie," and I was like, I'm like, wow, what, out of context. And then his wife was like, "Do you know where the nice shops are?" I was like, "Oh yeah, like Chanel and stuff." I'm like, "Right there, this way, if you go this way." I'm like, "I'm sure Steve Griggs is pretty happy." I was like, "Yep, go down here, then you're gonna hit all the big stores right there."
Just helping out Steve.
I was like, this girl knows her high-end luxury fashion. And so anyway, I do love that. I loved seeing like what people in Milan were wearing, and you could buy on the street. I wore all these like random coats. I just bought them on the street corner. There is no store name. I don't even know how it shows up on like my credit card. It's just store on the street corner. But everyone in Milan is very interesting. And what it felt like was you could be in Milan and everyone was looking at us, like wearing our credentials and our CBC jackets, like as if like, who are you guys? We're like, oh, the Olympics is happening right now. Like, what are you guys doing here? Like, you obviously know the Olympics is going on. It was just so strange. So I'd say the fashion. I would say the food, although I didn't really get to eat a lot because we were working so much. But like, as people know, going to Italy, like if you eat just like a tomato, it's like, it just tastes better. It's like you don't have to, it's so good. Everything's so fresh. There's not as many preservatives or any at all. I don't know. The pizza, I ate like a full pizza one day. I was like, this is the best pizza I've ever had in my life. Like just inhaled that. So those were great. And then the games. And I felt one thing, as someone covering hockey a lot and as a former competitive figure skater, watching figure skating was so meditative. It was like, it was just such a nice and interesting way to spend your time. Like you're not looking at your phone because you're just like watching this person on the ice do incredible things. And so those were really interesting things to see. And of course, as I am super grateful to have gone to both gold medal games. And I think before the men's game, where it was just a really beautiful day, everyone was just going bananas, tailgating everywhere. You just had this like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to go to this game. I'm so lucky and so grateful, but also I was like so nervous too, like what was going to happen and everything. It was just,
Yep.
you get to be able, we're lucky to be able to experience the highs and lows and to care. That's what I say. Being able to care about something in this day and age where we're like, don't really care. Like, and I say this in a sense of like, we just go through the motions a lot of different things. Or like, I got to get on to the next thing. Or like, I'm looking at my phone. Or like, I got to go do this. It's like to be in the moment and to be so dialed into something and to feel like this empathy towards the winners, towards the losers. Like, what a great like what a great experience to be able to have that. And now I'm getting, again, once I just get all like in, like, just go off on a tangent, but like it was just a nice reminder of humanity, really. That was my takeaway from the Olympics.
Straight from the Italian. Can I call you the Italian source? Is that what we're going with now? Straight from
No,
Italy?
because it took me, okay, last thing, I know I say last thing is just going to be my book title is, okay, so Americans go to Italy and they usually just say grazie, right? That's not the way you say that's thank you. It's grazie. And people, we figured it out. We're like, just think of Messier, like Mark Messier, grazie. And so when PK threw to me on the broadcast in Carolina, he said like buonasera and whatever. I'm thinking, just make sure you say grazie like Messier. And instead of saying, I kept saying grazia, and they were like, no, that's like a name. You're saying it wrong. You're trying, but you're saying it real wrong. And then, but if you say grazie, they'll literally just like spit in your food and be like, okay, get out of here.
So you're mixing Gretzky and Messier.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, you're
couple
right.
of Oilers legends. Okay, all right, fair
Right.
enough. All right, I like it. I also liked this question from Keith, who said, I read a comment made by a Lightning fan that losing 2 games in a row could make the team humble and hungry for improvement so as to avoid a repeat of the 2019 playoffs. Do you think there's any value in a couple of humbling losses?
Oh,
And
well,
I
I'm
would,
going to throw this to you. You answered this one.
I would say 100%. Like we just talked about, coming out of the Olympic break, you're trying to figure out some things. You're trying to make sure everybody's back up to speed. And yeah, like you have to, I think, get back to where you were. And unfortunately, like the Lightning were 21-1-2 in their last 24 games. And it was like, okay, here we go. But you have to also remember, like, there's still a good sprint here to the finish, as we've said on this podcast. And I do think that there's nothing wrong with handling some adversity before the playoffs, because then this is something that John Cooper can point back to when the playoffs start and say, hey, do you guys remember that first week of March when we were like, this isn't our style of play? And within a week, we were able to, hopefully, we'll see if it happens, get back to it, right? Like these are the things that you can point back to and say, we got through that. And I think that especially when that adversity hits in the playoffs, you want to have these moments where you can point back to and say, look where we are today, right? We were able to overcome what happened on this day where things weren't going our way, and we're still here. And I think there definitely is value in facing some adversity. You never want the perfect season, right? Like let's face some adversity and go from there.
Right. I think that's such a great point. When you look into the playoffs, like imagine, God forbid they're in the playoffs and they drop 2 games like this. And then you can, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, are we just done, dusted, whatever, like completely on the back of our heels? And you can say, hey, look, sorry. No, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks. I honestly, someone was just about to come into this apartment and
We'll guess.
they might still.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. I'm staying in corporate housing. Sometimes they have housekeeping come in. I took the sign off, and it's unfortunately I did that last night. Okay, so back to this. I really wish someone could have come in here. We could have just asked this woman.
Would have been a good cameo.
Yeah. So okay, but I will say, as Coop will always, what I love about him is his consistency with his messaging. And he used this at the Olympics too. It sounded classic Cooper. If, you never want adversity, right? You never want it. But when you can get through it, it is a teachable moment. Everything can be used as a gift and opportunity to learn. And I think there is value in being put on your heels, even though you don't want to drop points. That is a big thing. But being like, okay, we aren't going to be in cruise control going forward. It's not like, oh yeah, we came back. Look, we were so good before. We're still so good, whatever. And it kind of goes to your head, and you can kind of just, not sail along, but like everything's great. And so you want it to be great, but if it's not, what can you take out of that? And I think it's like, okay, we got to get back to the basics. Like they were I talked to Brian Engblom in between periods last game, and I was like, so what's, what happened in the first 10 minutes for you? And he's like, and I probably am paraphrasing in the wrong way, but this is what I took, is that they were more focused on how they would play with the puck and their puck management, and not necessarily how they would play when they didn't have the puck, which is where they got beat defensively. And they seemed very flat-footed. And, as everyone says, they gave so much time, so much space to this team. And then it happened 2 times in a row. Sometimes you can think, oh, well, we're down 3-0. We can come back. But as Rob Zettler said after the Carolina game, he's like, it takes so much energy to come back into a game like that. And then you've wasted that much energy, which you could have used in other ways to be able to win the game, right? Like you're just trying to get it back to even score, and you don't want it. But if you can show that you've done it before, I mean, that does work volumes for everyone in life. Like if you can show that you can get back up after you fall, like that's just information, knowledge about who you are as a person and as the group. So I'm sure I was looking back at the press conference and some of the different answers that Cooper said, and I think it was Eric who asked. By the way, I saw Eric on the street yesterday in Tampa. I don't see anybody I know anywhere, and Eric rolled down the window and was like, "Hey, Julie," and so he was like, "Do you lean on your vets now?" And he was like, "I don't know, we'll see." Like he didn't think maybe leaning on the vets. So I'm curious also what Coop took from the Olympics and that whole experience that he can bring to this, because every experience you can learn something from, and then maybe you implement it going forward onto something or onto whatever it is, right? So I'm curious what was in the room with him, because we didn't get any. You don't really get a whole lot of access at the Olympics. And even Kyle Bagaskas, who's the sideline reporter for CBC, is like, I realized there that you don't get anything. You're like, it's very difficult at the Olympics. So I'd like to learn more about what Coop experienced there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this season, we do have a great partner of Into the Blue before we get on to the plus minus segment, and that is Penelope Bourbon. So shout out to Penelope Bourbon, who is a proud partner of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Whether you're cheering at Benchmark International Arena or if you're raising a glass at home, Penelope brings fans together, one pour, one moment, one win at a time. And you can find Penelope Bourbon at Publix or at Benchmark International Arena. Go Bolts. And Julie, with that, our resident Olympian, as we've discussed, I'm going to make you go first as our Olympian. What is your plus?
Oh, my plus is you calling me an Olympian. Like I've made it. I always wanted to be an Olympian in both figure skating and track and field. I wanted to be I want to be summer and winter Olympian and win gold in both, obviously. And nobody ever told me you can't do it. And so I'm glad that nobody ever told me I couldn't do it, because I continued to strive to do it. And then I ended up at the Olympics just in a different way. So yeah, plus is that I'm still riding an Olympic high. And thankfully, like I talked with Brandon Hagel about before the game once, it's really nice and also very difficult to go from the Olympics right back into NHL. However, it's a lot easier on you mentally to continue doing that, because the come down after the Olympics is very, very harsh and very difficult. And I will take this reminder to tell everyone that the Paralympics begin on Friday, opening ceremony of this week. And actually a couple events begin ahead of time. So please, these are the people that are doing the most work in the most difficult situations and really need to be celebrated. So plus, let's just say, I'm glad to have experienced the Olympics and to be able to come back to this, but I really want people to watch the Paralympics.
That's a great plus. I figured there might be some Olympic tie-in there for the plus. So, I mean, why
no,
wouldn't
you set me up that way. Okay?
I know. I know.
What about you?
My plus is going to be something we touched on a little bit. It's Braden Point's return to the lineup.
Yeah.
Like, he has been flying out there. And I think I get that he had a couple of extra weeks, unfortunately, because he was supposed to be on this Olympic team for Canada, as you mentioned. He looks incredible for a guy that missed 11 games. Take aside those extra 2 weeks where he could have been skating. I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet to ask what he did over that 2-week break, but he missed 11 games with an injury, and he's got 5 points in these 3 games, 5 points in his first 2 games even, and he looks incredible. And I think that if you're the Lightning, again, if there was a silver lining to unfortunately Braden Point not being able to go to the Olympics, it's that he's officially full health and he's going to be a central piece as the Lightning try to lock up the Atlantic Division. And if he plays anything like what we've seen these first 3 games, the Lightning have to be thrilled because he's been incredible since coming back from this injury. So that's my plus is Braden Point looks really, really good as he was before that unfortunate injury in January. So you have to be super excited if you're a Lightning fan to see the way he's played.
And just to add to that point, I did get a chance to talk with him, and I specifically didn't use the word Olympics because I just didn't want to like trigger him or make him feel weird. But I was like, so how have the last couple of weeks been for you when you're not playing? He's like, oh, you mean like not going to the Olympics? I was like, well, you said it at me, like, because I didn't want to. And he goes, he is such a stand-up guy. I honestly, we're so lucky to be able to have him on Tampa Bay Lightning because he's the characters through the roof. And him saying like, I was just glad, this was before Carolina and he was facing Seth Jarvis. He's like, I'm glad that if I wasn't at full strength and full health, that like someone like Seth Jarvis was able to go and have an Olympic experience and be able to compete for Canada and give them the best opportunity to win. I'm like, there you go. That's your team guy. That's like why you're so grateful that you drafted this guy and developed him and why he's a 2-time Stanley Cup winner. And then to that point, he said, but it was difficult. And he went home and he said, I'm lucky that I kind of had time away from the rink in a way. And perspective is so important in these situations. So I think that he said, I'm glad to have a strong family and friends and support system in that situation. Because mentally it's got to be so, like, he was one of the first players named to Team Canada months and months ago. And then to see, and you're like watching your dreams happen, and it's got to be horrific, honestly. But then to that point, he said, if you're lucky enough to play in this game, there are going to be these ups and downs. And so that's just part of it. And that's what you sign up for. So sage advice coming from the young Braden Point, I'll say. I can say that because I'm much older than him. So
okay. All right. My minus, Julie, is that you mentioned the Binks jinx. I also jinxed myself over the Olympic break. I actually got to play a little bit of hockey during the break, which was great. But I was actually, as we were getting ready to go out on the ice, I was telling somebody, I was like, I have this hockey stick that I've had for almost 10 years. It's an Easton. So that's all you need to know.
Oh, yeah.
They don't even make those anymore. But it was an old Easton HTX, like almost 10 years old. And I was telling somebody, I'm like, this thing is invincible. I'm like, I literally could never, I was like, I've had this thing since I was like 19. It's an unreal. It's my favorite stick. I'm like, and the worst part is I know that when it does say goodbye, I can't just go buy another one. And literally 2 shifts into that game, blade went flying on a one-timer. And I was like,
wow,
I did it. I said, this stick is invincible. And literally 15 minutes later, it was sitting in a trash can at TGH Iceplex. So I jinxed it.
Whoever gave you that pass deserves to figure out a way to get you.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it was just a great hard pass. I like that. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't the stick's fault. It was on the pass. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, my minus is that I jinxed it and I broke the stick
I'm
that I
sorry,
said was
that's
quote
a tough one.
Invincible. It's just
is that a wooden stick or no?
No. It's a full fiberglass. It was like years ago when I was in high school. It was Easton, Bauer, and like Warrior was making sticks, but they weren't like quite up to where they were. See, now I feel old because I can say that I had an Easton stick. But
I was gonna say, I asked if it was wooden. Okay, I had a Sherwood that I broke when I was showboating, and I sat on my stick and then I fell and I broke my stick. Do you know how embarrassing that is to showboat and to break your stick by like sitting on it? I had to go back. The blade was just dangling off. The other team was like slow clapping me off. I was like, all right, okay.
All right, deserve.
Deserve.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that was your minus, but
other
than the Sherwood,
but you know what was also a pretty big minus in that game was I only brought one stick.
Oh
So
no. Okay. So you're borrowing somebody else's stick.
So I'm
Okay.
like, all right, I'll just take the L and I'll be out. I was the captain of the team too, so you can imagine what kind of hootenanny we had there on the ice if I was the captain. Okay, so minus would be, I don't know. I'd say the minus is that like I can't believe it's March and I'm like, wow, I only have like 5 weeks left here and I'm gonna sprint them all. And I'm like, holy cow, the season's like almost at the end of the regular season. So that's my minus. Also the minus is that all my mail is in New York and it's really difficult to do life when everyone's sending things to a different state. So yeah, that's challenging.
I didn't even think about that.
Including your paycheck too. Just wanted to let
Oh.
everyone here know that it's going to New York, Steve. There, but I'll find it somehow.
I didn't even give that thought. The New York, the mail thing.
Yeah, because you can't change your address
Change
for
your address
like
for
4
6
months or something.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work that way. So, but anyway, I have a friend sending it. It should hopefully get here before I leave. And
Okay.
and by leave I mean like April 15th. But anyway, yeah, no minuses. We're riding high right now. We're just happy to be
Absolutely.
here, happy to be alive, happy to have family and friends, health and happiness. That's what we're happy about.
Well, we are happy you're back, Julie. Like I said, it was weird doing a couple of solo podcasts, and I know everybody's excited to see you back on the Scripts broadcast as well. And I'm sure the guys are happy to see you back too. So
I don't know about that, but they have no choice. So
they didn't
I'm
miss.
here.
You think I guarantee they missed the Julie questions for sure. Come on now.
No, they don't miss that at all. Players would rather there be no media ever whatsoever, unless
That's probably true.
I do like saying like I want to tell your stories, right? Like give me something that you would like. We can raise your star level. Like help me help you. Like let's do this, right? Give me a good story. Boom. It's like free PR. Tell me something good. We'll put it out there. Yeah.
All right. Well, Julie, that's exactly what we are going to do because the Lightning, as we mentioned, are practicing here in about an hour in Brandon, and we will bring you guys all the updates. By the time you listen to this, hopefully we have some good news, more good news than bad. We will see. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Into the Blue. Ben Pierce and, of course, the great Julie Stewart-Binks is back. We cannot wait to talk to you guys next week post NHL trade deadline. You guys take care.